Every so often, two ideas hit the world at roughly the same time, and everyone assumes they're destined to be rivals. Coke versus Pepsi, Marvel versus DC, fast food joints fighting over who gets to clog the most arteries, and in the late 90s, it was Pokémon versus Digimon. On the surface, the two looked similar, kids with weird little creatures battling it out in brightly colored worlds. To a casual observer, it felt like twin franchises sprinting for the same finish line. But anyone who lived through it knows they were nothing alike. Pokémon was clean, simple, designed for mass appeal, a bright, friendly universe where even the villains were more incompetent than threatening. Digimon, on the other hand, was messy, complex, and often surprisingly emotional, with storylines involving sacrifice, loss, and entire digital worlds collapsing under the weight of their own code. One franchise built a global empire on consistency. The other had the potential to carve out a niche built on deeper stories and darker themes. The problem is, only one of them got the support it needed to succeed. There was a time when Digimon actually felt like it could go toe-to-toe with Pokémon. Back in the late 90s, kids with plastic digivices clipped to their belts weren't just playing with a toy, they were training a digital companion, a little monster with evolving forms and personality quirks living on a pixelated screen. It was novel, it was different, and it had an anime that didn't pull punches emotionally. Kids weren't just watching battles, they were watching characters deal with loss, sacrifice, and friendships strained by hardship, even existential questions about what it means to be human in a digital age. Meanwhile, Pokémon was already conquering the world with trading cards, Game Boy cartridges, Saturday morning cartoons, and a marketing plan so airtight, it might as well have been designed by NASA. But here's the thing, in those early years, Digimon had something Pokémon didn't: complexity, narrative depth, a willingness to dip its toes into themes that were heavier than "this kid wants to be the very best." It had a following, real momentum. For a brief, shining moment, maybe a year or two at most, it looked like Digimon could carve out a place beside Pokémon at the pop culture table, if not steal the whole spotlight outright. You had Digimon Adventure, dropping emotional nukes on children's Saturday mornings, while Pokémon was mainly about Pikachu electrocuting Team Rocket again. For a while, the gap didn't feel so wide. But then came Bandai Namco, and with them came the decisions. Oh, the decisions that would slowly, almost methodically, clip Digimon's wings. At first it was subtle, developmental delays here, underfunded projects there, localization that felt like an afterthought rather than a global strategy. Pokémon was expanding into movies, colossal game releases, competitive tournaments, endless merchandising pipelines. Digimon fans were lucky if a new game even launched in their region, much less on time. Somewhere around the mid-2000s, you could feel the scales tipping, and it wasn't because Digimon didn't have potential, it was because Bandai Namco didn't know what to do with it. That's the tragic part. This isn't a story about an inferior idea losing to a better one. This is a story about a company holding an ace of spades and repeatedly playing it like a three of clubs. Pokemon had the clean, family-friendly, all-ages empire. Digimon had the chance to own the edgier, more mature corner of the monster collecting world. Instead, Bandai Namco smothered that potential with half-hearted game launches, baffling cancellations, limited releases, and enough delays to make even Square Enix blush. By the time Digimon Survive finally limped across the finish line, after years of waiting and radio silence, Pokemon had printed enough money to buy a small nation. What makes this decline so frustrating is that there was a moment, around Digimon Adventure 2, maybe the release of Digimon Tamers, the early PlayStation games, when Digimon felt like it was building towards something. The anime had fans crying over the death of a digital fox, while Pokemon was just introducing yet another rodent mascot. Digimon games experimented with RPG mechanics, branching stories, moral choices. Pokemon games, while polished, played things safe for the masses. If Bandai Namco had doubled down, funded bigger projects, kept the momentum rolling with consistent global releases, Digimon might not have surpassed Pokemon, but it could have secured an unshakable cultural foothold. Instead, the company stumbled into a pattern: announce a project, generate excitement, delay it into oblivion, sometimes cancel it altogether, or release it in such limited quantities that only eBay scalpers truly win. Whole live service titles like Digimon Re-Arise simply disappeared. Servers shut down like they never existed. Fans invest time, emotions, sometimes money. Poof, gone. Compare that to Pokemon Go, still pulling in millions every month years after launch. One company commits, the other flinches at the first sign of trouble. And then there's the leadership churn. Producers leaving, creative teams shuffled, direction changing mid-development. Bandai Namco treats its franchise like test experiments instead of long-term investments. There was even a stretch where it felt like the company itself didn't want to admit Digimon still existed outside of nostalgia projects. You get the occasional anime reboot, a card game relaunch, maybe a new RPG announced with all the enthusiasm of Attack Seminar, but no sustained vision, no unified push. It's like they saw Pokemon dominating every space from games to trading cards to Hollywood movies and thought, nah, we're good releasing this one game 3 years late in only 2 countries. Meanwhile, Pokemon just kept rolling. Not always perfectly. Sword and Shield had its controversies. Scarlet and Violet launched with enough bugs to qualify as a horror game. But the Pokemon Company understands something Bandai Namco doesn't. Consistency beats chaos. Fans will forgive flaws if they trust you'll keep showing up, if they believe the next thing will actually release, actually be supported, actually exist in their region without a treasure map to find a physical copy. And this is where the decline really calcified. Delays you can recover from. A few underperforming titles, fine. That happens, but cancellations, shutting down live service games, limited physical releases, that tells your audience you're not reliable, that investing in your franchise is risky, and once fans feel like loving your series means getting burned eventually, they drift. Some go to Pokemon, some just stop caring. Momentum dies not with a bang, but with a long sigh of disappointment. So where did it all finally unravel? Honestly, you could point to Blue Protocol as a prime example. It wasn't even Digimon, but it showed how Bandai Namco treats its big projects. Years in development, marketed as this sweeping MMO that could compete with Genshin Impact or Final Fantasy XIV. Even partnered with Amazon Games for Western release. And then they just pulled the plug. Western release cancelled, Japanese servers shutting down barely a year after launch. It's like Bandai Namco is allergic to follow through. If they ran a marathon, they'd get to mile 25 and decide, let's just Uber to the finish line. The same energy bleeds into Digimon. Remember Digimon Re-Arise, the mobile RPG that actually had a fan base? Gone. Servers shut down. Another digital ghost in the graveyard of Bandai Namco's half-hearted experiments. Digimon Survive? Announced with excitement in 2018, delayed so many times it became a running joke. Finally released in 2022, looking like it barely survived development itself. By the time it launched, all that hype had deflated like a sad birthday balloon 3 weeks after the party. And let's not forget the physical release fiascos. Entire regions sometimes didn't get copies. Pre-orders vanished, fans scrambled online like digital scavengers trying to figure out if the games actually existed in their country, or if it was some kind of ARG Bandai Namco was running for fun. Compare that to Pokemon, where release dates are global events, stores stacked with copies, streaming platforms ready with the anime, merch hitting shelves like clockwork. Pokemon builds hype, Bandai Namco builds excuses. Here's the wild part though, Digimon has fans, loyal ones, people who stuck through every messy delay, every server shutdown, every confusing reboot of the anime's timeline. These folks keep showing up, hoping this time will be different, and Bandai Namco rewards them with the consistency of a power outage during a thunderstorm. You almost have to laugh at the chaos. It's like Bandai Namco runs on corporate philosophy of announce first, plan later. They treat long-term franchise strategy the way college students treat group projects. One guy does all the work, the fans keeping the series alive. Someone else shows up at the last second with a half-finished PowerPoint, Digimon Survive, and the rest just ghost the assignment entirely, Blue Protocol. Meanwhile, Pokemon is out here turning every generation into a billion-dollar industry, while Bandai Namco can't even commit to keeping servers online for a mobile RPG. So what does the future even look like for Digimon? Honestly, it depends on whether Bandai Namco ever learns how to commit. If they streamlined their strategy, focused on consistent global releases, stopped canceling projects the moment profits dipped below instant billion-dollar hit, and actually treated Digimon like a flagship rather than a side hustle, the franchise could thrive again. Digimon has room to be different. Darker stories, older audience appeal, more complex mechanics. The digital world aesthetic that Pokemon never really touches. There's space for it, but that space needs a company willing to build, not just announce and abandon. Imagine a world where Digimon games launched on time, with marketing campaigns that didn't feel like afterthoughts, where anime reboots tied into major game releases, card games got global support, and live service titles didn't shut down the moment someone in accounting got nervous. Fans would show up. They've always shown up. They just need Bandai Namco to meet them halfway instead of hiding behind corporate curtains every time something underperforms. Will it happen? Hard to say. Bandai Namco has the attention span of a cat in a laser pointer factory. But maybe one day, someone in charge will realize Digimon could be more than nostalgia fuel for 30-year-olds who still cry over the Digimon movie. It could be a real player again. All it needs is vision, consistency, and the radical idea that finishing what you start might actually be good business. Until then, Digimon will keep existing in this weird limbo, loved by fans, full of potential, and held back by the same company that's supposed to be steering the ship. Because in the end, Pokemon didn't just win because it had Pikachu. It won because the people running it knew what they were doing. Digimon lost because Bandai Namco didn't. And until the changes, every new project announcement will come with the same fan reaction. Excitement, mixed with the sinking feeling that this too might end up being another unfinished story in Bandai Namco's growing collection of what-ifs. Even as Bandai Namco stumbles on so many fronts, one thing Digimon does very well is take creative risk. Risk that Pokemon almost never touches. Pokemon is built on steady ground. You know what you'll get. Cute monsters, gym badges, friendly rivalries, minor villain schemes, a reassuringly safe adventure. Digimon instead has always leapt off cliffs and built its wings in midair. It trusts its audience enough to deal in darkness, emotional fallout, digital sci-fi complexity, moral ambiguity, even characters messing up in ways that don't get tidily resolved by the end of the episode. There are episodes where human characters wrestle with grief, guilt, their own trauma, as if the digital world tears itself apart. Or their partner Digimon is deleted, or worse. Pokemon might have the promise of, you catch them, you battle them. But Digimon forces its heroes, and us, to think, what's the cost of this power? What does it mean if a digitalized being suffers or sacrifices? A recent article nailed it. Digimon has always been better than Pokemon when it comes to stories. Not just because of nostalgia, but because its stories make you carry them when you're older. You remember the characters' flaws, not just their catchy anthems. GameSpot, another write-up, puts it more bluntly. Pokemon plays in pastel tones and happy ends, but Digimon dishes out emotional stakes. Stuff like Digimon Tamers, where loss isn't glossed over, or Digimon Adventure, where the relationship between humans and Digimon partners feels real enough when something goes wrong. It hurts. Now people are getting excited again for Digimon Story, Time Stranger, the upcoming RPG scheduled to release worldwide October 3rd. What's revved up some interest is that Time Stranger seems to be leaning into what Digimon does best. A strong narrative setting in the digital world, characters with agency, choices that matter, mood, stakes. It's been teased as having multiple trailers, cinematic pitches, lore-heavy story that doesn't feel like it's just tossing monsters at you for the sake of creature collecting. The fan reactions already suggest that people aren't just excited for monster battles, they want something that speaks to them, pushes button, messes with expectations. All this to say, the creative aperture is wider in Digimon than in Pokemon. The best parts of Digimon are when it leans into its complexity instead of trying to be everyone's monster game. Time Stranger might be one of the times where Digimon finally seems serious about that promise, and that's one of the few bright spots in its narrative arc, because while Bandai Namco often drops the ball, or on support, or launch consistency, at least its creative DNA, Digimon, is still trying to do something bold. In the end, Digimon's struggles were never about the idea itself. The series has the world, the characters, the fan base. It had all the raw materials to stand shoulder to shoulder with Pokemon. What it didn't have was consistent backing from the people in charge. Bandai Namco spent years tripping over its own releases, canceling projects midstream, and delivering games so unevenly marketed that fans weren't even sure it existed outside of Japan. While Pokemon built a global machine with tight launches and long-term planning, Digimon felt like it was always scrambling just to stay on the board. But here's the thing, the interest has never gone away. Each time a new game gets announced, people start hoping again, thinking maybe this is the time the franchise will finally get the focus it deserves. Digimon doesn't need to dethrone Pokemon, it just needs stability, ambition, and a company willing to treat it like more than a side project. If Bandai Namco can finally deliver that, Digimon has every chance to step out of the shadows and remind everyone why it mattered in the first place. I really hope you enjoyed this one. It was a little bit too personal for me, but hey. Make sure to like and subscribe, and peace out.